Hello, good morning, or whatever time of the day it is for you, wherever you are. It's nice to see you. Once again, I'm just going to take a little minute to say thanks to people who are watching the videos and people who are getting in touch and saying that they're enjoying them. Like I say, I don't do this to generate a massive audience necessarily. I do it because it's something I'm passionate about. Um, my kind of internal thoughts about this are always that if one person is enjoying it, one person is finding it beneficial, then my my work here is done, and I will keep doing it for as long as I have passion about it. So yeah, thanks to the people that have been getting in touch and saying that they've been finding the videos helpful. Other content that I've done helpful. I do check out some of the old stuff as well, written and video. If you're kind of lurking there in the background, thank you. If you want to get in touch or comment or about anything that I say, whether you agree or disagree, I'm happy either way. Get in touch, let me know. I'd be happy to hear from you. So the thing I wanted to talk about in this video, it sounds a bit clickbaity. The title will come across as a bit clickbaity, I think, but that's okay. And it's three simple rules to decide whether you should say something or not. And I think this is really important these days because we the way our society is laid out at the moment, I don't know how you feel about it, but I just think that with social media, and I talk about social media quite negatively a lot, it is such a great force for good. It's such an amazing way to access information. It's a great way to keep in touch with people that you don't see on a regular basis that otherwise you would just lose all contact with. It's a real powerful thing, but there's elements of it that are horrendously toxic. And if you think about the big things that have happened in recent years, Brexit, Harry and Meghan, I'm probably not being very topical, but these are kind of the things that immediately come to mind. General elections. People form their tribes, don't they? And then they'll defend their position with all they've got. And if you look at how kind of polarized people get and how people speak to each other on social media, it can be absolutely horrendous. And this is part of the reason why I withdrew a bit. And if I think about Twitter is the example that comes to mind. So I used to be a bit more active on Twitter when I kind of mainly used it as that was kind of where I followed all my medical accounts. And I would post a bit as well, my opinion, whatever it may be, and sharing knowledge and all this kind of stuff. But if I take medical Twitter as a subset, and I'm sure it's the same for lots of other industries, teaching, police, the way that people speak to each other is horrendous, and there are elements of that. If I think back to my own experience of working in A&E for as long as I did, um, no, this is what people would say to you. It feels sometimes like no one really likes you. And I remember having a guy who was was he my supervisor? No, he was just a guy that I worked with when I did some anaesthetic training. And I remember feeding this back at the time. We would all do some anaesthetic training as part of our early emergency medicine training. And I remember the first day I met this guy as a consultant anaesthetist in the hospital I was working in. And the first thing he said to me was he wanted to know what I was planning to do, sort of career wise, because it was generally with those kinds of trainees, it was generally either acute medicine, emergency medicine, or anaesthetics. And so I told him that I was emergency medicine, and he basically told me to F off. And then spent the rest of that theatre list telling me why everyone hates A&E doctors. And so we then had I mean, I was a bit taken aback, but I'm robust enough to be able to deal with these kind of situations. Probably more now than I was then. I remember being a bit shocked and just thinking, actually, that's really inappropriate. But there is a lot of this peppered throughout medicine. No matter the culture that's lectured about how we should speak to each other. People speak to each other horrendously, and it happens a significant amount of time, especially when you work in an environment like the A&E department. So when it's getting to the point where you don't want to, you're not looking forward to picking up the phone to speak to a colleague in a different department because you know that you're going to have difficulty, introduces all sorts of bias into the situation where actually you start to think, oh, well, maybe I don't really need to do that. And you're starting to minimize things a little bit, and it can actually be quite dangerous. Um, so how we speak to each other is really, really important. And I think tribalism, particularly in medicine, is a huge issue, and we ignore it. We sweep it under the carpet, and we don't acknowledge the effect it has. So I've got three simple rules, and I don't necessarily think that these are rules that I've invented. I think these are just things that have stuck in my head from before, and structure always makes sense to my brain. So three simple rules before you say something to someone if you're trying to work out whether to say it or not. Um, so first of all, is it kind? So actually, if you're going to be unkind to someone, don't say it. Okay, so have a little think about it. Take a pause. If it's not an emergency, you've got time. Give it some thought. Is it kind? Is it constructive? Okay. This is the other thing in medicine. We're not very good at constructive criticism. We'll quite happily tell someone that they're not good at something and probably not use those words, but that's not constructive. Okay, so we need to be giving people advice that they can take some kind of action on. Okay, it might even be that that's positive as well. So you're telling them something that you want them to do more of. So is it kind? Is it constructive? And then the other thing is, does it need to be said? So again, take a pause, have a think. Is what you're about to say absolutely necessary? Does it need to be said? Is there going to be some, are you by saying it, are you preventing something terrible happening in the future? Are you just saying it because you're hungry, you're frustrated, you haven't had a break that day, you just fancy having a pop at someone? Just consider what the purpose of what you're trying to say is. Okay, so if you're is it kind? Is it constructive? Does it need to be said? If the answer to any of those is no, then I would urge you to not say it, or at least park it. Give yourself a bit of time to consider what you're actually trying to achieve. Okay, and I'm no angel when it comes to this. I remember stressful shifts as a senior trainee, as a consultant. Particularly as a consultant in the sort of latter part of my A&E career, where we were looking after a department that was jam-packed full of patients, and we had threadbare departments throughout the hospital who it felt like at the time were just being very sluggish in the response to us asking them to do things, even things that are routinely part of their job. Getting people to try and take responsibility for things. So I definitely had times where I maybe said things that didn't tick those boxes. But and there's times maybe in emergency situations, I always tried to remain polite and appropriately assertive in emergency situations. But if there was ever situations where it was very rare, where I would lose my rag. I'm not a kind of lose my rag kind of guy. Generally, I would pretty much 100% of the time apologise for it afterwards. So it's not the end of the world if you don't get this right 100% of the time. The most important thing is that you're able to reflect on it afterwards and think about how you would adjust your approach the next time. Okay, so that's my very simplistic approach to how you figure out whether to say something to someone, and it can be used as a generic tool for how we communicate with each other, because certainly I can only speak from my own experience where I worked in medicine. I think there's a lot of room for improvement. I think I will probably do a separate video on tribes in the future, but yeah, for now, that would be my one ask, would be that we just all make a little bit of effort to try and communicate with each other a little bit better. Okay, let me know what you think. Be glad to hear from anyone. Comment, send me a DM. I don't mind, and I will catch you next one. Be well.